We started out with 10, now we're cutting our way down to 5.
Kind of like we're showing up, we gotta all remember what we're here to do.
Matt Koger, look at that axe just disappear into that block.
You better make sure you're under A game or it's not going to pan out.
Unfortunately, it didn't come off when I thought I was going to. It hung on there for one more hit.
Pushing the limits with these saws, there is nothing left to give.
5 athletes will punch their tickets to the semifinals of the U.S. Championship. Let's continue our Pool B competition of STIHL Timbersports. Well, thanks for joining us today to watch the best choppers and sawyers from across the country compete. The 2021 STIHL Timbersports U.S. Qualifiers. Tommy Sanders here with Kevin Holtz. And Kevin, we are halfway through our second group of 10, also known as Pool B. We've lost a couple of guys in the process. We've lost Will Roberts, former collegiate national champion, and Mike Slingerland as well, a perennial favorite out here. We got 8 to go on now and 3 more disciplines. What's at the top of your mind right now?
Yeah, well, no time to look back at the 2 we've lost because we've got 8 guys just in a slugfest out here. The ones that are jumping out to me, though, Grant Foreman was not on my radar at the start of the day. He's on my radar now, doing an exceptional job out there. And of course, lumberjack showman extraordinaire Derek Knutson also putting on a great show in Pool B action.
All right, we'll be looking at all of those and more. The 8 are left in the final 3 disciplines, which include the often volatile hot saw. That is on the way. Let's take a look at how our 3-round competition is scored. In round 1, our 10 competitors will compete in 3 events: the underhand, the stock saw, and the standing block. Then only our top 8 advance after that round into round 2. In this round, they'll compete in the single buck and the springboard. The 6 athletes with the most points after round 2 advance to the final round. The remaining field of 6 survivors will compete in the hot saws. This unpredictable event will be the final competition to decide who moves on to the semifinal round, which certainly ratchets up the stress of making 3 complete and clean cuts within the allowed distance. So let's get started on this next segment of our journey to find the U.S. champion for 2021. This year's pool rounds are conducted in 4 different locations around the country in virtual matchups. Each contestant lays down their best time in each discipline against a competitor on a different stage in another part of the country. Let's continue our Pool B competition with round 2. We'll get it started with the single buck. Here's Dave Jewett with our Duluth Trading Company Discipline Review.
On go, you want to go full speed on a push or a pull stroke using the entire saw. It's a 2 to 3 peg and raker. The pegs are the teeth. They cut the wood. The rakers clean the wood. You want to use the full saw, cutting on the forward stroke, cutting on the back stroke, using every muscle in your body from your toes all the way up to your head, driving the saw with confidence through the entire log. If you deviate from your technique, you can dive a raker into the wood, bringing you to a sudden stop. Then you have to regain that momentum, losing time.
Here we go, the single buck. First heat, Zach Brous versus Mike Forrester.
A little bit of a rough start off the top for Zach Brous. Mike Forrester not really using that entire saw, an exceptionally powerful individual, and sort of just hosses it off. Zach Brous really looking slow. I'm not sure what's going on there. He is hanging up consistently.
Zach Brous, after a bit of a shaky start right there, seems to have things going, and then at one point here, Kevin, I think you can see where he starts in right there.
That hung raker is such a jarring experience. It absolutely slams the brakes on you. If you've got a pre-existing back condition, I can't even imagine the agony, and you can just see him try to struggle through the rest of it. Obviously, things are weak at this point, and he manages to push off the cut.
So Mike Forrester with a time of 20.39 takes the heat. Zach Brous, who's experiencing some trouble with a long-standing back issue, unable to complete that one to his satisfaction, and he's going to have to take a little time out right now. Here we go with heat number 2. Calvin Willard going to be going up against Chas Haas. Chas Haas kind of down there at the lower end of the points tally right now. He needs to put forward his best effort.
Really sweet run going on from Calvin Willard. Entire saw running there. Some trouble though for Haas. A bit of an odd saw angle. He's heeling in at the bottom of those cuts. Really a solid cut from Calvin Willard. Running that saw, running it consistent and clean. Calvin having a really solid day here, looking to advance to semifinal action.
Calvin with a time of 13.38, a time of 16.04 for Chaz Haas. Ready to go with heat number 3 of the single buck. This is going to be Grant Foreman going up against Derek Knutson.
I don't know if you saw that, but Grant Foreman was counting out the teeth between the handle and the block, making sure he was starting in the exact right spot. Hang up for Knutson at the top, but now he's bringing the fuel. Look at him. He is through to the halfway point of this block. Saw is slowing a little bit once he gets in the big wood, and now Foreman is catching up. But oh my gosh!
Oh, that's too close. Oh my gosh, look at the times there. A single 100th of a second separating Knutson and Foreman. Knutson takes it with a 13.22. Final heat of the single buck, our top 2 seeds. Matt Koger fresh off of basically lapping the field in the standing block going up against Logan Scarborough.
3, 2, 1, go!
Both Matt Koger and Jason Lentz, so you'll see at another point in the competition, have put in a ton of work on this single buck event over the past several years, training with the best of the world, and it has paid off. There's Matt Koger driving that off cleanly like it's a walk in the park.
Time of 11.71. Matt Koger easily takes this single buck competition as well. Logan Scarborough's time of 12.74. We're halfway through round 2 of our knockout rounds, and time is running out for the athletes on the bubble. Right now, that's Zach Brous and Chaz Haas. They'll have one more chance to make a move. As athletes scale a 9-foot tree, Springboard is next. STIHL Timbersports is sponsored by STIHL, maker of a full line of gasoline and battery-powered handheld outdoor power equipment. Find yours at stihlusa.com. By the Duluth Trading Company, the official workwear of STIHL Timbersports. By Ace Hardware. Ace is the helpful place. And by John Deere. Nothing runs like a deer. Centralia, Washington, one of the 4 locations hosting competitors for our first ever virtual competition. We have athletes competing from around the country vying for one of the 20 spots in the 2021 STIHL Timbersports U.S. Championship semifinals. We are halfway through our round 2, or our knockout rounds. Right now, Zach Brous and Chaz Haas sit at the bottom of the leaderboard and in danger of elimination. The goal for today be one of the 5 finalists that will move on to the STIHL Timbersports U.S. Championship semifinals. Now we're ready for the final discipline in round 2. To tell us more about the springboard chop, here's Dave Jewett in our discipline review.
The springboard chop, using your axe and 2 boards to ascend a 9-foot pole standing 8 feet in the air to sever a 10.5-inch block. How do you get to the block, though? You have to look at this event in steps. Step 1, chop a bottom pocket. That first pocket is going to be 4 to 6 hits. You will be inserting a board into that pocket. Then you will jump on that board to chop a second pocket. That second pocket will be made in 4 to 6 hits to insert a second board. Jump up, get to the back of the board. That's where you will use every muscle in your body to chop 80 to 90% of the way through the front side of that block. Then you will turn to the back side. You have 2 choices, chopping up and down, removing the chip, or the new school style of hard downward slices.
In our previous discipline, the single buck, Zach Brous injured his back, and unfortunately he will not be continuing in our competition, will not advance to the semifinals. We wish him a speedy recovery. His opponent, Logan Scarborough, would set a time of 1:34.52. First heat of the springboard chop's going to feature Calvin Willard doing fine on points, kind of cruising right along towards qualification, towards moving on. Different story for his opponent, Chaz Haas. Chaz Haas way down there in points. He needs to, well, have a Hail Mary that works at this point.
Just as a reminder, we are doing a lot of virtual stuff here this year because of 2021 and all the issues that come along with it. Willard is actually on a stage in New York State. Haas is on a stage in Wisconsin, running head-to-head, trying to beat that time. I'm watching Haas on stand number 2 on the right side of your screen. I do not like that board set. There's a fair amount of sag there. Good news is, in springboard, you don't have to inhabit that first board very long. Willard is going to move past Haas with a really strong, but maybe a little too much upslope on that second board set. Regardless, Willard is into the block at the top. Haas getting that second board set. He's looking pretty flat on that one. Way out to the back is Haas, looking really solid. Trouble on Trouble on number
What's happened
one.
Here? No.
Oh, there's trouble on number 1 and number 2. I don't even know where to start. Willard, his block has become dislodged, disconnected, unfastened. I don't know what. Haas has a terrible sagging board. It's putting a lot of extra stress on that pocket, especially towards the top of that pole. Calvin's just he's trying to decide what to do with the situation up there.
Yeah, he's done.
Yeah, and Haas is not looking great at all. This is a rough heat for both parties involved, especially for Calvin Willard.
See if we can get the official story, the official ruling on Calvin Willard in just a moment. Still waiting for Chaz Haas to finish his cut here as time clicks away.
Chaz running that Cassidy Shear style windmill swing on the backside of the block. He will post a time. He's not going to be happy about that climb. And we've got a penalty flag from Rich Hallett. Let's go back and look at the troubles here for Calvin Willard. He gets into the front of this block. 4 or 5 hits in, and that's when disaster strikes. This round of up hits, there you see it start to lean and it finally dislodges. I don't see any screws on this side of the block. There obviously was something. There must have been a couple, 2, 3 in the back side of the block. That is a drastic change of events for Calvin Willard, an unfortunate event for Calvin Willard. Disqualification. Turning our attention back to Chaz Haas, that first sagging board, that's bad, but that's not the end of the world. As long as you can hang on for 4, 6, maybe even 8 hits into that second pocket, you're good to go. When this second board starts sagging, you have a tremendous amount of work to do from a terrible work position, and that just saps your power, it saps your energy. You see he has to creep his way up, he has a glancing blow. He's going to end up with his front foot almost stuck in that springboard pocket.
So unfortunately, we just saw the block come loose from the stand while the athlete was chopping. And the rules are really clear on this point. It's the athlete's responsibility to make sure that their block is mounted properly. And it goes on to say that when they start chopping, they've accepted the block as it is. We give the athletes every opportunity to go in and check the mounting and the screws and to make sure everything is secure. And in this case, it obviously wasn't. So it's a disqualification. There's no time.
Yeah, combination of being a hard tree, my axe wasn't cutting, kind of bouncing off, and then I just started running some troubles and started to tire out a little bit and misplaced a few hits. So that's just the way it goes, though. That's wood chopping.
Next to the springboard, our 6-time national champion, Matt Koger, going up against Derek Knutson. Derek from Hayward, Wisconsin. That's where he's competing as we watch him right now. Derek Knutson has been log rolling since the age of 4. He's from Hayward, Wisconsin, so in that town, that's what's called a late start.
Yeah. If you're not log rolling a week before you start walking, that's delayed development in the Midwest. Oh, and trouble for Knutson. His first board is sagging a little bit. That second pocket, I saw the bottom of that open up and split out a bit, and I actually saw the duct tape tear a little bit. I'm hoping that's not going to come back to bite him. Matt Koger is up on his second board, just wading into that white pine. Knutson looking to reel him in. He's got his work cut out for him. Knutson a couple of flat hits in there at the bottom. There is Koger off already.
Matt Koger's official time, 52.97, good enough to take over the lead. Derek Knutson winds up with a 60.01.
Had a little peck in the bottom, so it was 5 and 6 kind of climb, and didn't feel too awful bad, maybe just a little rocky on it, but hey, at the end of the day, that's all that matters. You got it off, and yeah, hopefully it's a good time to be leader in the first place on that.
Ready for the final heat in the springboard chop, the surprising Grant Foreman doing very, very well today. Going up against Mike Forrester, and Mike Forrester, who in the interim since our last championships had a little trouble. He has a chopping facility. He calls it his chopping arena. It was burned up in some of those western fires there, so we're kind of pulling for Mike Forrester here in light of all the trouble he's had to endure.
Yeah, Mike has lost a good amount of timber, a good amount of property around his place. We sympathize with everyone who's been dealing with all the issues in the wildfires. He is looking to take that out. Maybe some pent-up aggression here as he works his way into the springboard. Grant Foreman, a big step. That first board was not a great board set. The second board is a great board set, but that means you got a big jump from 1 to 2. As he lays into this, opens at 1 and 1. He's got to start spanning those hits out, going after those corners. Now he's got some chips falling out of that block. Forrester drives into the heart of that block. Bit of a sagging board, but he gets around to the backside, losing a little bit of that pace. I can't emphasize enough, that back foot being down puts you in a horrible work position. He gets that block to twist, finds those far fibers. Look at how much Grant was able to reel him in, though, just by having that good work position on that second board.
Grant Foreman's time 7.7, 77 seconds, .33, 70.41 for Mike Forrester.
My chopping arena burned up during the wildfires down home, and I haven't been able to work on Springboard because my poles and everything burned up, so I've been just working on pockets and stuff, trying to get better at it, and it was okay. Top pocket could have been a little better, but hey, I got up on my boards and I was able to get it done, so I'm happy.
Well, there we see our final times. Matt Koger once again taking the top spot, and Derek Knutson right behind him. Chaz Haas needed a third place or better finish in the springboard to advance to round 3, so we say goodbye to him and Zach Browse as we move into round 3. The 6 remaining competitors will battle it out in the final event next on STIHL Timbersports, the Hot Saw. But first, these athletes dedicate immense hours to training for these events, but many still find time to serve their community. Let's find out in the Ace Hardware Helpful Profile.
I own my own business. I own my own arborist and logging company, and so I do give back to the community a lot. Like for example, this past year I got rid of a big dead sugar maple in the middle of town and donated a brand new Christmas tree for the town. So we usually get a tree every year, a spruce tree donated, and they put it in. It's temporary. In the past couple of years it's been kind of hard to get one, and it's blowed over in the wind on Christmas Eve this year. So I went through and I said, hey, presented to the board, can I buy a tree and plant it permanently for years to come? So I like doing stuff like that, giving back to a community that's given a lot to me to help me with my sport. I have my own lumberjack show right in Bedford, Pennsylvania, and a lot of those people sponsor and help out, so I like to give back to them as much as I can.
Competition of STIHL Timbersports continues. We have athletes competing from around the country vying for one of the 20 spots in the 2021 STIHL Timbersports U.S. Championship semifinals. Now, we're headed into our final round of elimination. Only 6 athletes remain. The only thing standing in their way, the most unpredictable and unforgiving event, the 60 horsepower modified super saws, the Hot Saw. Here's Dave Jewett in our discipline review.
Loudest and fastest event in timber sports. These are the Frankensteins of the saw world. This is the Hot Saw. Once the competitors bring their saws up on stage, they have an 18-inch log in front of them. Now they are allowed a 60-second warm-up. Why? These saws are 250 to 350 cc engine. Since this is the final event, the competitors can no longer hold back. Hands on top of the wood. They wait for the go. On go, they must start the saw, pick it up, full throttle into the wood in around 1 second, severing that 18-inch log with a 200-mile-an-hour chain speed. A seamless transition into the upcut, once again feeling that 60 horsepower engine, then going into the third cut, hopefully dropping 3 clean discs in around 6 seconds, getting major points.
Saw warm-up begins for Calvin Willard and Grant Foreman. Our first heat of our final discipline of the day. We are down to 6 athletes at this point, and only 5 will move on.
I mentioned how the springboard is not necessarily one of the first events you gravitate to as an up-and-coming competitor. I would file that in the same category with the Hot Saw. Here's another one we may see Grant struggle a bit, but he has put on a great day here in qualifying rounds. Calvin Willard, of course, coming off an exceptionally disappointing springboard, a disqualification. He's got to grab every point he can at this.
For all of our 6, you definitely want to get 3 complete discs within the boundary.
And a fast time. Because these guys,
yes, that too would be
there was
great.
the day where it was like, you know what, 3 clean ones on the deck, and you've got a shot at moving on. We're past those days now. This is go time. Calvin with a conservative run, but even that conservative run puts him in the mid 6-second range.
And that performance is our John Deere power play. Nothing runs like a deer.
Calvin Willard on the left side of your screen to see how he was going to come back from that disqualification. And he does it quickly, cleanly, but safely. Not throwing caution to the wind, not wide open in between cuts. A good, clean, conservative run from Calvin Willard.
Yeah, last event hot saw went pretty well. Wasn't a fast run, but just kind of an average run. You know, most of my events today went pretty good, other than my DQ and the springboard. So we'll see how it all shakes out.
Calvin's time a 6:52. Grant Foreman 7.70. Well, here we go with our next heat in the hot saw. Six-time champion Matt Koger looks to be a lock for the semifinals. He just needs to lay down 3 clean cuts to move on. His opponent, Mike Forrester, sitting in 5th place in points, needs to lay down a fast time to have a chance of moving on to the semifinals.
Yeah, this is a race right here. Both of these guys are extremely experienced operators, Tommy. And Mike Forrester, very delayed to the block. You'll see our really experienced cutters are just going to roll from one cut into the next with zero hesitation, zero throttle lift. They're looking for clean, safe cuts.
Well, there you have it. Mike Forrester, Matt Koger, both laying down 2 fast times and will be moving on to the semifinal.
Yeah, it went really good. I made the 3 cuts that I needed to within 6 inches. You know, just wasn't really going for a little lightning fast run on that one, but just a nice consistent run, and just put it all 3 cuts together. And well, at the end of the day, that's where we let off, and I'm sure I'll be moving on to the next rounds.
Grant Foreman, who's on the bubble, will have to sit and wait for our final 2 competitors. To see if he'll advance to the semifinals, we'll find out when STIHL Timbersports returns. STIHL Timbersports is sponsored by STIHL, maker of a full line of gasoline and battery-powered handheld outdoor power equipment. Find yours at stihlusa.com. By the Duluth Trading Company, the official workwear of STIHL Timbersports. By Ace Hardware. Ace is the helpful place. And by John Deere. Nothing runs like a deer. Welcome back to the STIHL Timbersports Pool B competition. We are down to our final heat of the hot saw, where 3 competitors have punched their ticket to the semifinals. Matt Koger, Calvin Willard, and Mike Forrester. Grant Foreman sits on the bubble. His fate is in the hands of our final 2 competitors, Derek Knutson and Logan Scarborough. Here we go, final heat of the hot saw. Standing 3rd and 4th in overall points as we come into our final discipline are Derek Knutson and Logan Scarborough. You definitely don't want to drop the ball at this point. We are only going to lose 1 competitor of our 6. And if you fail to get the job done here, you could be vulnerable, no matter if you're in 3rd or 4th.
Well, Tommy, as you know, and any of our viewers that watch this from year to year know, opportunities for failure abound, and there is nothing stock about them. Every piece is just a handcrafted contraption out of what used to be a reliable motorcycle engine.
A true unlimited racing category here.
3, 2, 1, go!
Both these guys clean the wood. Trouble. Logan Scarborough.
No. Oh boy.
Oh, that'll ruin your day right there. Logan, I think, was sitting in 4th place overall.
Yeah, so we just saw Logan Scarborough in the hot saw, and unfortunately, he threw a chain partway through the cut. He does have a 1-minute time limit from when the word go happens to put the chain back on, but oftentimes the chains are hot and they're really sharp, and it's really hard to get them back on properly. So he elected to just say he was done. I was waiting for him to give that signal because he does have a whole minute. He didn't elect to take it. It's a disqualification, unfortunately.
You know, it's aggravating, but hey, that's timber sports, so that's what makes this fun. Yeah, that's unfortunate. It's not supposed to happen on a saw like that, but finally getting in my groove in hot sawing, and and that happens, it's frustrating. So other than that, other than the chain coming off, I was happy with it. And the lack of 3 cookies.
Well, that was an absolute worst case scenario. for Logan Scarborough right there, so he will be the first man out. The 5 who will move on: Matt Koger, Calvin Willard, Mike Forrester, Derek Knudsen, and Grant Foreman. We'll see you next time when 10 more athletes will compete for 5 more spots in the STIHL Timbersports semifinals.